Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are right now. Thank you for tuning in to the Conversations with Dr. Don show. The show is produced and broadcast from the Portland, Oregon, USA area. And for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about tonight. We'll be talking about health care for all Oregon, and we'll be talking about what an interesting person my guest is, Benjamin Gerritz. How do you pronounce that?
Yes, that was exactly right. I'm impressed.
How are you feeling right now?
Honestly, I'm feeling filled with hope. I just really appreciate, I guess, how many people are activated, taking tangible actions on critically important issues.
Critically important issues. Name the top three for you right now, the critically important issues.
Well, for me, healthcare always ranks really high up there. So I would say that that's number one. There's a lot of news, both news that doesn't always make the CNN gotcha highlight reel, news that's inspiring, news that is incredibly disturbing and troubling. I would say education. I think, if I were to say that there were two priorities in terms of ways that we could empower our economy, it would be to invest in healthcare for all our people and invest in equitable access
and we'll
for
get
education.
More into the details of what you're talking about for this. For now, let's spend the first half hour or so talking about who you are personally, because a few things we said before the camera started rolling was how you've been on television before, and you've been interviewed by David Delk, good friend of mine, good buddy, and other events to do with social justice. And as we look at those kinds of things here in the Portland area. So let's talk about who you are first of all, okay? Call that my bio segment. And I'll read a few words from what you sent me first before I ask you any questions, okay? And if I ask you any questions that you don't want to answer, you can tell me I don't want to answer that or get lost or whatever.
Oh, I appreciate that. I like to be an open book, and if people embrace, I guess, whatever I have to say or they want to judge it, I affirm in everybody deciding for themselves, I guess, how they may view me.
Sure. Why do you think you're such an interesting character that you're on a number of TV shows in the past? Why do you think people want you on their shows?
It's a very good question. I feel it's incumbent upon me to be involved in issues that I feel are incredibly important. And I touched on two of them, healthcare and education. I think the more that we invest in equitable access to both, the better off our communities are going to be, the better off our economy is going to be as well. Mm-hmm. And I think because I have been very active volunteering to support a number of different causes, perhaps that has lended itself towards people inviting me, people such as yourself, and thank you for having me on the show this evening. Thank you especially to the viewers that are tuning in through various forms of media. I think it comes down to me trying to be of the best service that I can on critically important issues of our time.
Where were you born?
I was born in Portland.
Portland?
Yes.
You're a native.
Yes, I am, although I would put an asterisk on that because certainly I am, identify as white Caucasian, so I have to acknowledge that the term native, I feel this land that we are fortunate enough to be on is owed to sacred ancestors.
Interesting. When were you born?
I was born in 1978.
78.
Yes, on March 6th.
How old does that make you?
Pisces.
I don't do math pretty good. How old does that make you? How many years old are you?
I'm 39 years old And I think that I'm as happy today as I've ever been in the past.
Why were you born?
Oof, why? That's a very good question.
I told you I had a trick question or two. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Maybe
a lot of
I'll
people don't even
mention,
think about that, you know?
I have the good fortune of being the only openly gay person in my immediate blood family. So perhaps there was a color in the rainbow of our family that was missing, and whatever forces decided to bring me into this world said that perhaps it would be good to have a gay person in the Garrett's family.
I think it's a good idea.
Yes, I think so as well, and I would think that my husband does too.
Yeah. Does he love you?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Will you tell him what you think about him? Point in that camera. Say something to him. His name is Louis?
His name is Luis, although I refer to him as being gorgeous, because to me, he is the most gorgeous person in my life. And also I include in with that our beautiful and brilliant 20-year-old daughter. And she is brilliant. She's at the top of her class studying law at university. And she is as gorgeous as my husband. I'm very fortunate to share my life with two people that mean the world to me.
Does she love you back?
Yes, she definitely does. Yeah, we have this door in our small home in East Portland, and it's a chalkboard. I painted it, with chalkboard paint. And when she was staying with us a short time back, she wrote on, big letters and drew a big heart and wrote, "I love my dads."
Okay. And you talked a little bit about your white middle-class cultural heritage. A religious preference. Do you have a religious preference nowadays? Do you have an organized religion?
I'm not part of any organized religion. I would say that it's true not only for me, but for my husband as well. We are very spiritual, and we believe in aspects of spirituality such as the law of attraction. Essentially, the thoughts that I focus on within my mind and how that connects to what I experience physically shapes my reality. Mm-hmm. Whether I'm living the time of my life or I'm inviting in challenges.
Spiritual. What does spiritual mean to you? People oftentimes use that term, and I get different reactions when I ask the question, what does it mean, spiritual?
I think, well, for me, and I support, for each person deciding for themselves which aspect of faith or no faith at all they choose to believe in. For me, it is a internal compass, listening, I guess, to what my mind and body is telling me is going to be meaningful in terms of where I dedicate my time and energy, and listening when my mind and body is telling me that there may be warning signs that I might be engaging in something that intentionally or unintentionally may cause harm to myself.
Spiritual, and do you associate spiritual with a particular feeling or group of feelings, or is there a difference?
Yeah, in terms of feelings, I think certainly feeling joy. It has a number of things that go along with it. One's thoughts, I think, are lighter, focused on more positive aspects of life when the word joy comes up. Physically, it feels more uplifting. There is a certain energizing effect, I think, that the word joy holds. And then there's a word like angry. And angry, I think, by comparison, perhaps has the complete opposite. And it's important, I think, to save space for any type of feelings. And important, I think, also to think intentionally about why life may be joyful and why life may induce anger.
Okay. Did you ever have a form of religion when you were younger, when you were a kid? Or are you almost pretty much like you're thinking right now, a spiritual person, rather than a Catholic or a Protestant or a Muslim or whatever?
I was raised Catholic, and while I
sorry about
don't
that, too.
currently practice, I do have appreciation for people that practice Catholicism and practice the true aspects of Catholicism. I think it is very admirable to live one's life having privilege for the poor. Essentially the notion of equity. I think if one is truly practicing the tenets of Catholicism or other forms of religion, then it is the hallmarks of public stewardship, which I feel our society and a lot of our communities could benefit substantially from people embracing public stewardship.
What are you contributing to society and public stewardship? What are you personally contributing?
I'm very fortunate. The work that I do at Cascade AIDS Project,
Cascade AIDS Project?
Yeah, which is our area's largest LGBTQ plus health services and HIV services organization. I have the good fortune of serving others who, like myself, are living with HIV as a counselor and a case manager. I also work as a testing technician where I bring HIV, viral hepatitis, sexually transmitted infection screenings out into various locations throughout Portland.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about your being HIV positive?
Absolutely.
How long have you been HIV positive?
This September will mark 9 years that I've been living with the virus.
Yeah. And you have medications that you take regularly anymore?
Yes, we've come a long ways in terms of the medical treatment of this chronic health condition, and it is today known as a chronic health condition.
Yes.
One can live a healthy, thriving life just as though they were HIV negative. I mean, sure, there's some complications that come along with it, but medically, the progress that we've made, it's just
it's unbelievable.
It's
just in a few
incredible.
Short years, how far it's come, huh?
Yes.
And still making progress.
Yes, and we've made, I think, substantial progress with addressing and eliminating HIV-related stigma. I think if there is one area that I see that we still need to focus the most on, it would be that, on addressing and eliminating the stigma that is surrounding this chronic health condition. Not unlike other stigmas, you know, there's stigma associated, I think, with mental or behavioral health conditions. There's stigmas with who may have resources and who doesn't have resources. And HIV is, I think, one where there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of alternative facts.
You sound like quite a thinker.
I do try to do my best to critically think about issues in a broad sense.
Have you thought of yourself in terms of how bright you are, your IQ, anything of that nature? Have you thought of any about that for yourself?
That's an interesting point. A lot of people have informed me that I need to give myself more credit.
Yes.
I guess I like to be a little bit harsh on myself. I use it as a source of motivation to engage in as many activities as I possibly can. I haven't, though, taken the opportunity to consider whether I guess my mind would be viewed as something that might have a substantial IQ, or perhaps I'm just average, or perhaps I'm below the threshold.
I bring it up because of my curiosity. My impression of you is that you're smarter than the average bear, so to speak, and I wonder if a person like yourself has an idea of how bright you are compared to other people. I'm a clinical psychologist, among other things, and in my past life I did a lot of these kind of evaluations and testings, and I had a fun thing doing. I meet a person for the first time, and I was going to do a battery of tests, psychological tests, and then I'd give myself 5 minutes and make a guesstimate of what a person's IQ is.
Oh, yes.
And I found that over time, when I did the follow-up testing, I was pretty close to guessing how smart they were. And you're pretty smart.
Well, I certainly...
Even though I haven't given you a test.
I certainly appreciate the acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm. And would you do in your work life so far the same stuff you've been doing recently?
Yes, I've been a staff person with Cascade AIDS Project for 6 years. Previously, I was a volunteer for 3 years, and I initially was introduced to the organization shortly after I was newly diagnosed HIV positive, and for a variety of different reasons, I was not in a position where I could take care of myself. So I was immensely grateful that CAP was there for me in my time of need, and I'm immensely grateful now that it's come full circle. I can provide that service to others as they continue on their journey to live healthy, thriving lives.
Stigmatizing people who are HIV positive, that has been diminishing in recent years. Do you think it's still diminishing as time goes by?
I think that we have made substantial progress. I think that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. We know that even today, the vast majority of Americans believe that if I drink this cup of water and that you drink it, that you would potentially be exposed to the HIV virus. Or if I sit on a toilet seat, that could be a means whereby a person might be exposed to the virus. We know, that factually that's just not the case. And yet a lot of the fear, I think, is a motivator driving people to believe in alternative facts.
Well, I won't ask you anything more directly about AIDS or HIV unless you have some other thoughts about it. Let's move on because you've got so much information here I want to talk to you about. And you talked about your partner and your daughter. Politically, here's a troublesome question for some people. Politically, are you left, right, center, or what? Where are you?
Well, so I will say, I guess, that I tend to be more supportive of Democrats than, I guess, other political affiliations. I would consider myself to be more liberal, certainly. I would also say, I guess, that I advocate for causes that are progressive, although I have to acknowledge, I guess, as a resident of Portland, there's both, I think, beautiful aspects of what Portland is as a city, and I think Portland has a long way to go before our city or our state can truly claim the progressive title. I don't think you would see rampant gentrification or some of the systems of power unnecessarily targeting people based upon the color of their skin if we were truly a progressive hub.
So there's room for Portland to grow in that regard?
Yes, I think there's substantial room. And I embrace that seeing a lot of people who are moving into Portland. I think that will be very beneficial in terms of helping to promote change faster, which I think that our city would benefit from.
Some people have referred to as Portland as being part of the left coast rather than west coast. Do you think that's true?
To some degree, yes, although I would say that the work that is happening down south in the state of California, I think that especially with their policy that they perhaps do a much better job of investing in their people than we could claim in the state of Oregon. I think that's true for Washington State as well. I think Oregon continues to, I guess, kick the can down the road in terms of having the tough conversations about what we need to be doing to better invest in education and healthcare specifically.
Mm-hmm. How about formal education? How far did you go in school?
I was very fortunate that I was able to attend the University of Oregon. Go Ducks. No offense to any of the Beavers who might be viewing the show. I'm very grateful for my oldest brother who graduated from Oregon State University.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I was a double major in business administration and German. So when I was young, I had this notion that I was going to go into international business. And I actually worked in the private sector for quite a few years after I graduated. And I identified that my passion was more fulfilled in working in social services. And so I feel the work that I'm doing today, I'm incredibly grateful to be hopefully of the best service that I possibly can to our community, to people living with HIV and our LGBTQ plus community.
Do you get a personal feedback occasionally because of the work you're doing now with those kinds of people that you work with, that they recognize and acknowledge how useful and how helpful you are, and they appreciate it? Do you get that kind of impression from these people that you work with?
I do every day, and I'm enormously humbled by the words that they share with me. Words like, you saved my life.
You hear that sometimes?
Words like, I stopped using meth because of you.
Occasionally you hear that.
I have the good fortune of hearing it and seeing, I guess, people working really, really hard to change their lives in incredibly powerful ways every single day. To me, it's absolutely priceless.
Are you artistic? Not autistic, artistic.
Yes. Well, there's a possibility that I might be both. I mean, some people have said, yeah, that I'm the latter too. I haven't actually been evaluated to see whether that's the case. I am fond of art. And I should probably dedicate more of my personal time to creating it, because I do enjoy making paintings.
What kinds of paintings do you make?
Usually I dedicate time each year to doing one painting specifically to contribute into the Cascade AIDS Project art auction. Which a lot of people living in Portland recognize our art auction as not only being one of the best nonprofit events every year, but I think, one of the signature events in Portland every year. And I'm very grateful that, 3 years in a row, my pieces were accepted. The first one was, the inspiration was my husband. And so the painting is called Pendulums. And it's called Pendulums because he's an aerial arts performer. So I did an abstract depiction of him and the partner that he was performing with in this aerial arts company. I'm grateful that painting sold, so it brought in, a fair amount of money to support the work that we do with our organization.
What are aerial arts? Help me.
Like Cirque du Soleil would be an example. Yeah, people climbing up in the fabric and doing all sorts of things that if I tried, boy, I would probably be in, I'd
get 3 foot off the ground and pass out.
Yeah, I'd be in a tough spot. I did a painting called Viral. That one was a self-portrait, also an abstract painting. And that one sold at the art auction. And then I painted the statue of bigotry, It was sort of a honoring of Lou Reed's passing from Velvet Underground. He sang a song, not unlike I think a lot of his songs, that was sort of a very accurate assessment of the state of affairs in the United States in terms of the privileged often accumulating massive amounts of resources and everybody else sort of...
Say a few words about Lou Reed. I think I know who you're talking about, but say a few words for my viewers.
Well, so yeah, Lou Reed was a very famous musician and was, I think, most known for giving a very realistic portrayal of the struggles of humanity.
Is he political?
I don't think that he would say that he was political, and unfortunately the music world lost him a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It's not for me to say, I guess, whether he viewed himself to be political or not. Personally, in listening to his music, I find that it inspires me, I guess, to want to do more.
Do more, that's so important. Do more, want to do more. That says something about you. Yeah, I feel similarly in my own way, to do more, whatever it is I'm doing to better humanity and people I bump into, I want to do more. Yeah. Don't get me started. This is your
Yes, yeah.
A couple more questions before we take a break and come back to this other stuff that you're giving me to talk to you about. Persons in your life who are not alive today or are alive today that you look up to or admire. Any names come to mind? Some people have one or two, some people have three or four, some people strain and they find one. Anybody you think of, admire, alive or dead?
Well, unquestionably my mother, my husband, our daughter. Those are my top three. I mean, I am just so grateful. My mother devoted her life as a public school teacher. We struggled to make ends meet. There was a number of winters where we had to bundle up with as many clothes as we possibly could because we didn't have enough money to pay, for the oil company to come and, refill the furnace.
So you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth, so to speak.
No, and I'm very grateful for my upbringing. I think that my mother is the strongest person that I'll ever have known. I wouldn't have wished, I guess, what she had to fight through for my brothers and I to have a shot of making it in life.
How many kids did you have?
I have two older brothers.
Yeah.
And she taught me the importance of civic engagement. That it is something that should be a integral part of being a member of our community, to get out there, get into the streets, to engage on issues that hopefully help to make this world a better place.
Do you find that worthwhile?
I do. Yeah.
You ever feel like you're trying too hard and it's wearing you out? Or do you keep going or coming back once you start getting sort of tired of it?
Yes.
I've been there.
Yeah, I do have to acknowledge that there is a certain amount of burnout that does occur. When one is fighting so hard for an issue, say like addressing our houselessness crisis in the city of Portland and the state of Oregon, and then seeing elected officials who feel differently and don't feel like houselessness is a priority. It naturally, I think, is something that brings up a lot of different emotions. And I think it is important to experience all of those and save space for when an activist or an advocate feels as though they have to dedicate time to self-care. I think it's critically important that that happens.
How did you get to be the way that you are psychologically and emotionally and concerned with human beings and fellow citizens? How did you get to be that way? What contributed to your being the way that you are right now? Your concerns?
I would like, I guess, to see us live in a society where each person that is born into this world has equitable opportunities to live a healthy, thriving life the way they so choose, loving the people they so choose. And I feel for a variety of different reasons, that belief is being challenged right now by certain individuals in positions of power. I hope, I guess, that what they are trying to push is only a short-term issue. That in
let's
the long
don't talk
term,
about Washington, D.C. on this show, okay? A couple more hours for that. So let's take a break right now and come back and talk some more about other stuff, because you're so full of stuff to talk about. You're very interesting to talk with, yeah. A break, Mr. E. The idea. Okay, we are back now. Let me see. Whoever missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don, that you're watching right now, is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like my guest this evening, about who they are, who he is, as one-of-a-kind individuals, and he is one of a kind so far. And we're going to talk some more about his life and history and all the things he's been involved with. He's not too old, but it seems like he's lived about 120 years for all the things he's been involved with. How are you doing so far with the interview?
I think it's fantastic, and I hope that it's meaningful for everybody that's tuning in as well.
It will be, yeah. Advocacy and public policy since his early youth. Prevention with Positive Coordinator with Cascade AIDS Project. You mentioned Cascade AIDS Project before. And you've led successful organizing, educating, and mobilizing of people living with HIV to raise their voices on such issues such as equitable access to health care and affordable housing. You advocate for working families, serving your union, SEIU 503, Service Employees International University. Say it was SEIU again.
Yes.
Service?
Service Employees International Union.
That's a real union nowadays anymore, huh? So many unions have given in and joined the opposition.
That is true, that the strategies, unfortunately, to decimate what I feel, I guess, is a person's best shot to make a livable wage and to be respected on the job. The strategy to undo that, unfortunately, I have to acknowledge, has led to a lot of unions going away in a lot of states. Fortunately, here in Oregon, we've remained pretty strong, and I think we've done a number of innovative things here in Oregon, like reaching out to community advocacy groups for our unions to bring resources to support community advocacy, and likewise for community advocacy groups to support the rights that every worker should be afforded.
When I was working, other than as a psychologist many years ago, I belonged to 3 different unions at the same time, I think. I was a teamster because I was driving a milk truck for a while in a yellow cab. And United Auto Workers, AFL-CIO, I was an aircraft mechanic many years ago. I'm so old, I've done so many things. So I'm a union person way back.
Nice.
Okay. Why is access to universal publicly funded health care important to you? Why is that important to you? Universal health care. What do you think about Bernie's ideas about health care? Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I believe that each person born in the United States, with all of the riches that this country has, that it is within everyone's right to have equitable access to health care. And it's something that certainly is deeply personal for myself.
Of course.
Were I not to have access to health care, and I'm very fortunate, that I have access to the medication. I don't have to worry about getting hit with an enormous bill when I go to the doctor, which I do have to go to the doctor on a regular routine basis to make sure that my health is doing well living with HIV. I'm fortunate that the advocates that came before me, many of whom fought hard and died fighting, created services for people living with HIV to where we wouldn't have to be cost burdened like so many people unnecessarily are by our current approach to healthcare. And then, with me having the good fortune of being part of a labor union, that also means that we're able to have a voice in advocating for our healthcare benefits, not only for myself, but for our coworkers as well.
Why do we have the current state of healthcare in this country that we do? Why is that?
I think that we've made substantial progress in terms of the passage of the Affordable Care Act was transformative in terms of the millions and millions of people who were able to gain access to health care for the first time. Especially, I think, for the way that Medicaid is approached here in the state of Oregon and a lot of states across our country. I know that we still have a ways to go with some of the states that have rejected, I guess, making access to Medicaid as equitable as possible. I think it speaks volumes, for the advocacy that your health should not be determined by whether you're rich or poor. The areas of opportunity that we have left is certainly individuals, people that are working for employers that are currently purchasing their health insurance on the private market, which, as you know, as a lot of our viewers know, a lot of those entities are trying to make as much profit as they possibly can.
Really?
Yes.
I couldn't resist that.
And that's true for pharmaceutical companies as well. When it's a private company, it's beholden to the best interests of its shareholders, and I don't fault them actually for trying to push for what they're mandated by law to do, to act only in the best interest of their shareholders.
What do you think about that law that says you work in the best interest of your shareholders rather than the ordinary citizen?
Well, and so, when it comes to something like perhaps selling an iPhone, it maybe makes a lot of sense. When it comes to a person's health care, I think it raises a number of justified questions as to whether entities should be acting only in the best interests of maximizing their profits, which results in a lot of people not being able to access the care that they need. They're terrified to go to the doctor because they could barely afford to pay their monthly premiums. And then if they do get sick, there is a strong possibility the number one cause of bankruptcy continues to be healthcare expenses.
Is America ever going to, in our lifetime, ever have insurance-free or Medicare for all without the insurance companies being involved at all? Do you think America has that in the future? in the next 10 or 12 or 20 years or so? Medicare for all?
I feel that that day is actually coming a lot sooner than I would have anticipated
Well,
previously.
I hope you're right.
And you know, when we started off, and you asking me, I guess, how I was feeling about things, and me saying, I guess, that I'm inspired seeing so many people activated on issues that are critically important. Healthcare, I think, certainly is one where we're seeing activism sweeping this country. Part of it is a lot of the troubling, disconcerting, unnecessary attacks on healthcare that are happening in Washington, D.C. The flip side of that you might not see on the nightly news is the state of California came very close
that was
this
really
year. Yeah, just
How
last
that
month.
one guy managed to turn the whole thing.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and we shall see, I guess, whether the people of California feel as though that was a move that he should have made, the leader of their state assembly, not taking up the bill that the state Senate passed to make equitable access to publicly funded universal health care available to everybody in the state of California. Nevada was about to open up the possibility for anyone in the state of Nevada to be able to access their state Medicaid. That was vetoed by their governor. We'll see, I guess, in the next election cycle how Nevadans are viewing the governor taking out the veto pin and striking that down.
You got to stop making those comments because I'm turning into a pretzel. I've crossed all my fingers and my legs now. There's hope.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I guess, given that there are entities that are making substantial amounts of profit, like pharmaceutical companies, private insurance companies, off of the current unnecessary approach to private health care, they have substantial resources to influence policymakers. And I don't fault them, you know, for acting in the best interest of their shareholders. I think it's justified that people, constituents, ask their elected officials poignant questions as to who they represent when they're making decisions about healthcare.
And the question is, how important are shareholders? You mentioned shareholders 2 or 3 times as though they occupy the top of the list in the matters of social importance and social responsibility. And I think this whole system is kind of skewed, I think. I'm a democratic socialist, in case you didn't gather it. Let's go to a couple more questions, guys, okay? Tell me the economic argument for universal publicly funded health care. We've talked about that. Health care for all Oregons. Moving these moves. I mean, okay. You're an avid bicyclist.
Yes.
Oh, talk about that. I'm an avid bicyclist, but I started kind of later, as old as I am, and I ride as often as I can. And when winter comes in, the rain starts, I get very disappointed because I don't ride in the rain.
Oh.
You ride in the rain?
I do. Yeah, the only weather that I guess I don't ride in, and I sort of learned this the hard way, is when there's a threat of ice or snow. Because I've ventured out probably when I shouldn't have, and there was black ice on the roads, and you know, digging the asphalt out of the side of my hip is just, it's an interesting experience. But I refer to my bicycle as being my therapy.
And how often do you ride?
Every day.
Oh,
I commute back and forth to my work, which our offices are located in downtown Portland. My husband and I own a very small home that we love in outer East Portland. It's sort of the perfect distance. It's 16 miles round trip, and so it's my way of, I think, releasing the vicarious trauma that I willfully expose myself to in being of service, to people who I have the good fortune of serving at CAP.
So your aerobics are taken care of, huh?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Aerobics, you're exercising and breathing and those kinds of things rather than muscle work?
I think so. Yeah, I think I do get a fair amount of cardio in, and to throw a little icing on the cake, I actually will usually stop by the gym on the way home to do the weight training as well.
Yeah, you're looking good, man.
Yes, I've focused more this year on self enhancement. I think it's helped me to focus my mind towards positive thinking in a time where the news cycle is fraught with exposure to traumatization.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was the unfortunate and heroic situation on the Max station, which was only a few blocks from where I grew up as a kid. I would often, take that Max from the 42nd Street station, and incredible heroism. The three.
Yeah, say a few words about that to refresh people's memory.
Oh yes. Unfortunately, somebody got onto the train, self-proclaimed as a white supremacist, and started attacking this woman who was riding the train, just going about her business. And the woman was wearing a hijab, and so the person took it upon themselves to verbally assault this woman and to terrorize her. I mean, it's an act of terrorism.
Is that more going on nowadays than in recent years? That kind of behavior and anger at people who are not like them?
I think that we've seen, because of a lot of the things that have happened politically, that it has, I guess, given more of a voice to people who are embracing hate, people that are, I think, tragically filled with a variety of different conflicts with how they view the world, and use those views to certainly not to love or embrace others, instead use it to push hate. It's heartbreaking, and I mean, it's incredibly heroic of the three guys on the train to intervene in that situation. I mean, they are national heroes. I know that we don't have...
More of that is happening lately to counter the other side, the other behaviors, I would think. That's my impression anyhow.
That's what I take away, from that story, honoring those three guys that could have just ignored it. And instead, they chose to take action and step in and intervene. Two of them were, unfortunately stabbed by the white supremacists, and lost their lives, and paid the ultimate price, I think, for the fabric of the United States of America.
Yeah. Wow. Queer Northwest Hero Award. Queer Northwest Hero Award. What is that award?
That is an award where the organization, it's called the Gay and Lesbian Archives of the Pacific Northwest, and they have a wealth of historic and current information that they capture and preserve about local LGBTQ plus history. And every year they select 30 people from the Pacific Northwest.
How big is the organization?
The organization is actually all operated by volunteers, which I think is fantastic.
Of course.
So it depends on, I guess, how volunteers are moving in and out and what's happening, for them personally, professionally. I think it's fantastic that they work very closely with Oregon Historical Society to ensure that the Historical Society also preserves LGBTQ plus history. And they do select 30 individuals every year during the month of June, which across the country and across the world, June is pretty broadly recognized as the month to celebrate LGBTQ plus pride.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that sort of goes back to, I guess, the group of people, a fairly small group of people, I guess, sort of taken upon, Margaret Mead's quote, who on a night in New York City took a stand and said that they were not going to be attacked anymore because they were LGBTQ plus, because of the people whom they chose to love. That was a Stonewall riots that occurred in New York decades ago. And a lot of the rights that my family enjoys today, which is deeply personal. My husband's now a permanent resident. We're nearing the end of the process with me petitioning our daughter to be with us in the United States. She'll be the first among many future generations who will have this opportunity for the first time because of our history of activists that came before. And there's 30 days in June, so they select 30 people from the Pacific Northwest who they feel, and people have to be nominated, so I'll never know, I guess, who nominated me. I'm grateful and very humbled that I received the award, and I try, I guess, as best to be a positive public example of a hero.
What does the award say? Do you remember the words on it?
Oh, that's a good question. The award itself was actually, it's just a photo of me, and then it gives a brief summary of
Sure.
my work.
What else are you proud of?
Well, I guess, yeah, with the awards, I was very honored to have been recognized with the Pause 100 award, which that is, it comes from an organization that is Pause, and they're most well known for creating a publication, just providing, I guess, information, education as to what is happening with HIV, viral hepatitis, sexually transmitted infections, prevention, treatment, and care, highlighting lives of people living with chronic health conditions. And each year for them, they select 100 individuals from all across the country for whom they choose to recognize for their contributions to the field of HIV, or to civil and human rights that has a connection to HIV. And that was in 2013 that I was very fortunate to have been honored.
Where is America heading nowadays on the world scene, the world stage, as far as human rights is concerned, as far as making life better for more of the ordinary citizenry than what goes on nowadays in certain societies and cultures in different parts of the world? My impression is things could be better. Are they moving in the right direction, generally speaking, or does it balance out, or does it ever change at all?
It's a very interesting question. It wouldn't be for me to say, I guess, how anybody may or may not view, I guess, me as an American or somebody else as an American. I hope, I guess, that for myself, if it's the first time that I'm meeting somebody from another country, whether they're coming to the United States as an immigrant, a refugee, or I have the good fortune of visiting them in their country, that we can cultivate, develop a relationship that is mutually beneficial. Because I think that that is perhaps the way that we achieve equitable access to universal health care here in the United States. I think that's the way that we invest in education, so everybody has, opportunities to go to school, to create living wage jobs. I think it all comes down to relationships, whether it's one individual having a conversation with somebody that they've never met before, somebody maybe that even has much different views than I hold for myself, and finding that common bond of humanity that brings us all together. I think, I would be remiss were I not to acknowledge that the office of the President of the United States is recognized across the globe as sort of a office that a lot of people justifiably look to in terms of whoever holds that office makes statements about who we are as Americans.
Well, they're going to yell at me if we don't stop talking.
Oh, yes.
But let's do that, because we're going to shut down pretty quick in a couple of minutes. Look at that camera over there and tell the viewers anything you want to say to them in the last 30 seconds or so about anything.
I would say thank you so much for tuning into this broadcast. Thank you for staying active on issues that are important to you, that are important to your family, and important to our community. We need you to stay active in the long term, and I look forward, I guess, to all that we'll accomplish working together, finding the common ground that brings us all together.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Yes.
We have a minute or so for a few public service announcements. And there, before we shut down, PSAs. To learn more about the American Civil Liberties Union, that's my favorite organization, go to www.aclu.org and learn more about the ACLU. We got to end corporate personhood. We got to speak up that corporations are not persons and money is not speech. And there's the website, movetoamend.org.
Yeah. Critically important.
Thanks for watching. Remember KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. And you too.
And you too.
Yeah, got it. Thanks for coming right again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You bet. We'll be in the future.